Hello and welcome everyone to today's introduction to software development kits and command line interface on Oracle Cloud. My name is Tara Van Cleve and I'm a marketing event manager for the developer initiative here at Oracle. We're excited to show you key concepts and capabilities of SDKs and CLI, as well as a hands-on demo of the recently launched interactive CLI feature. If you do not currently have an Oracle Cloud account, we've got a special promotion with extra credits so that you can try out the OCI services and follow along with the demo today. To access the promo, please sign up using the same email address you registered with for the event, and we'll be dropping that again in the chat in just a moment. We'll also be recording the session, and the link to the recording will be sent to you via email in the next couple of days. If you have any questions during the webinar, we've set up a channel in our developer public Slack called Webinar OCI SDKs CLI that you can access at the QR code or at bit.ly/odevrel_Slack. Once you're in, you'll land in the general channel, and from there you can search for the webinar channel. We'll also be checking the Zoom chat and the Zoom Q&A areas throughout the webinar, and we'll open up for the live Q&A after the demo. Today's webinar will be presented by Senior Product Manager Kartik Hegde. Special thanks to Aparna Ramesh, Senior Product Manager, who will be helping answer questions. And so without further ado, I will hand it over to Kartik.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. My name is Kartik Hegde. I'm a Senior Product Manager here at Oracle. So in today's session, I'll talk about two fundamental and important tools that you need on Oracle Cloud to build your application and automate your workflows. So the two tools that I'll be talking today are software development kits or SDKs and command line interface or CLI. Before we get into SDKs and CLI, a brief introduction about me. I've been here at Oracle for a few years now, working on various technologies. Currently, as a senior product manager within Oracle Cloud division, I'm focused on OCI SDKs and CLI, and I help developer community in general. So with that, let's get started. All right, I have an agenda for the session today. I'll start off with an overview of what our team does here at Oracle, and I'll set the context for the rest of the session. Next, I'll talk about introduction to OCI SDKs and CLI and how you can use them. And we will dive deep into some of the important capabilities and features. We will follow this up with a new release of CLI feature, namely interactive CLI. And I'll show you a quick demo to highlight its capabilities. Finally, we'll wrap it up with a series of poll questions that can help us gather your feedback and get what you think about our products as well. So with that, let's get started with first item on our agenda, overview of Oracle Cloud Developer Tools and Services. Okay, so I will use this slide to set the context as to what problem we are set out to solve and how our team goes about solving this. So as a cloud developer tools and services organization, our primary focus is on helping developer community. And from our observation of various recent surveys and reports, there are two key problems that stood out. The first problem is productivity, meaning developers are spending less and less time on utilizing their key skills like writing code or building applications, which is only surprisingly 30% of their time. So rest of the time they are spending in deployment or patching their applications, handling security or support issues, things like that. This is effectively hindering their productivity and in general the developer productivity time. The second problem that is compounding the first problem is the lack of automation. So today developers need a ton of tools and technologies to work with so that they can be efficient at their job. But if a cloud provider doesn't provide them enough tools and technologies for them to automate on top of the cloud provider that they have access to or they're working on, developers tend to not to adopt that specific cloud provider. So these are the two key challenges or the problems that we have observed from developer community. So our team's goal or vision is to address these two key problems. And we do that by creating tools and services that enable developers to adapt, use, and build on top of OCI. So we are not just limited to one specific area of a developer lifecycle, but we support end-to-end software developer lifecycle. In order to achieve this, we primarily focus on three categories. The first one is increasing developer velocity. What I mean by increasing developer velocity is that developers should be able to have tools at their disposal to write the code and automate as many tasks as possible without having to focus on non-productive tasks like focusing on security, patching, or support issues. Our second focus is to provide simplified developer experience. This means we want to meet developers where they are with the choice of their tooling and provide the flexibility while making sure that the developer experience is top-notch. The focus of our group is to provide complete solution. So that means as a developer, you should not be able to write code with proper tooling. Not just that, but build and deploy your code using CI/CD best practices. You should be programmatically manage your infrastructure using infrastructure automation tools like Terraform. And then you should be also able to manage your hybrid environments and able to deploy your code across multiple your working environments. So it should be a complete developer life cycle, and that's what our focus is on. So in order to achieve this vision of ours, how do we go about it? And what do we provide on OCI? And what exactly do we provide to developers and other customers in order to achieve what they want to do on top of Oracle Cloud? So let's talk about that for a minute. So what we provide are nothing but a set of tools and services that meets developers' problems that we discussed in the last slide. So in a nutshell, we own the frontline surfaces that developers use to interact with OCI services. So that starts with SDK libraries. So today we support SDKs pretty much in all popular programming languages, such as Java, Python, Go, and you can see the full list that we support here. Now, similar to SDKs, another tool that we offer along with SDK is Command Line Interface or CLI. Apart from these two tools, we also offer managed services like CloudShell, Code Editor, which is a browser-based service for you to do online code editing. And we also provide source code management, otherwise known as SCM, that lets you to manage your source code repo, version control your source code, etc. We also let you to build and deploy your code via our managed CI/CD service known as OCI DevOps service. And finally, if you want to manage your infrastructure, you can use OCI Resource Manager that lets you to write infrastructure as a code using Terraform. So that's the breadth and depth of tools and services that we offer to our developers on OCI today. Now let's switch gears and talk specifically about SDKs and CLI by going into introduction to OCI SDKs and CLI. So first, let's discuss why do we need SDKs and CLI and what benefits do they offer? So there are four distinct benefits SDKs and CLI offer to our customers. The first one is automating the common task on OCI. For example, Sintra is one of our customers, and they're using CLI script and .NET SDK to audit their tenancies daily for governance, compliance, for risk auditing, etc. The second benefit is to integrate your existing application with OCI services. For example, R2DA is one of our customers, and they have an application that stores large number of PDF files onto OCI object storage. Here, OCI object storage is a managed service provided by OCI. So R2DA uses OCI object storage to integrate their application with OCI. And in order to do this, they use OCI's Python SDK. The next benefit that helps our customers is to migrate to OCI from their on-prem or their hybrid environments. To give another concrete example, Darling is one of our customer, and while they were trying to migrate to migrate their EBS Exadata to OCI, they used OCI Java SDK to accomplish their lift and shift. The last key benefit is help build new cloud net new cloud applications on OCI. So let's say you are trying to build out a native cloud native application on OCI. You can use our SDKs. Voicepin is a real example of that. They use OCI SDK to build a web dashboard that lets users to download the music on demand. So these are some of the key benefits for you to use SDKs and CLI. Now, these are the real examples that highlight the importance of SDKs and CLI and shows you the various scenarios in which you can start using SDKs and CLI. Now, having talked about the benefits of using SDKs and CLI, let's turn our attention into understanding what exactly SDKs and CLIs are. Now, in layman terms, SDKs and CLI act as a bridge or an interface for you to make you meaning a client to make an easy connection to a server or a service. So in this case, as a client, you are making a connection to OCI service using SDKs and CLI. So SDKs and CLI act as that bridge. Meaning SDKs and CLIs are nothing but client tools that make secure REST authenticated API calls to OCI services. So they basically provide wrappers that are built on top of REST APIs that are provided by various OCI services. For example, let's say an OCI service like object storage. I take example of object storage because it's one of the popular OCI services. Now, if you OCI object storage offers the REST endpoints, the SDKs and CLIs are built on top of these REST endpoints or the REST APIs that allows you to make secure API calls over the internet. Now, technically speaking, SDKs actually provide easily consumable methods or functions in your favorite programming language for you to interact with OCI resources. CLI also provide the same core functionality that you would see on the console. So let's say if you have logged into OCI console, you can go through the menu, you can browse the console to spin up the resources to take a specific action on the console. The same thing can be done using CLI. So CLI extends the functionality that is offered by console. Plus, it offers additional commands such as ability to run scripts that we saw in our last slide, our customer Sintra that builds CLI scripts to audit their tenancies. So those use cases can also be done via CLI by writing scripts. So that's a 3,000 feet view of what CLI and SDKs are. Now, let's dig a little bit deep into the OCI SDKs in general. So going into the detail of OCI SDKs, first and foremost, our SDKs are open source, meaning they are free to use. They don't require a subscription or a license or anything of that sort. So as long as you have access to a OCI tenancy or OCI services, you can use SDKs freely to interact with those services. So where can you get SDKs from? Well, as we release them to multiple places today. A common place developers that are familiar today are GitHub, and all our SDKs are available on GitHub. We also release SDKs to language-specific repos like Maven for Java SDK, PyPy for Python SDK, RubyGems for Ruby SDK, and so on. So the idea here is that SDK should be available for developers on the internet where they're most likely to look for. So we want that to be easy for users to download and start using. Now, what else do we provide? For each SDK, for every API operation, we make code samples available on our documentation. You can see here in the screenshot, let's say you are interested in launching a compute machine and you're looking for, let's say, a launch instance API. So you can go to docs, our API, what I mean by you can go to our API docs where you can see the launch instance specific API, and we provide the code sample for every specific API, in this case, launch API. The code that we provide is not specific to one SDK. It includes all the different SDKs, whether it's Java, Python, .NET, all the different SDKs, we provide these code samples. What you can do is you can just take this code sample, you can either refer to it or you can copy paste it, and then modify it by providing the values, and that specific code snippet is now ready for you to use. This way, we want to make sure that there is a minimal learning curve when you start using SDKs or when you start making API calls against one of our services. And these ready-made samples will help you to get started and start working on your application or project as soon as you can. Now, this is great, but what about use case based code samples? Let's say, for example, you want to stream data to OCI object storage, or let's say you want to build a simple web application. Well, we got you covered. We maintain a use case based samples in our GitHub, and you can tweak your code by downloading some of these sample use cases in order to work for your use case. This means you don't need to spend extra hours researching about how to write code for specific SDK on OCI, but you can just build on top of the sample code that we provide readily on our use case based code samples. Now, at the end of the session, I'll share the details of these resources so that you'll have it handy for you to use going forward. Okay, now let's discuss about CLI. Okay, dwelling into CLI, similar to SDK, CLI is also an open source tool. So you can download the CLI directly from GitHub. You can also install the CLI from various other package managers, depending upon what operating system you use. So for example, for Linux-based operating system, you can use yum install. For Mac, you can use brew. If you're using pip, you can use pip. If you're on a Python environment, you can use installer script that will prompt you and allow you to install the CLI. You can do an offline installation by downloading our zip file that we readily provide on GitHub as well. A couple of months back, we also released CLI container image that will make it easy to install CLI on Docker. So if you are a fan of Docker, and if you are interested in running the CLI on a Docker environment as a container based, you can do that as well. Now let's see the command syntax for using CLI. So all the CLI commands start with keyword OCI, followed by a service name. So in this case, it is IAM that you see on the screen. Next, it shows you a resource type, followed by action, and then the option for that specific command. I'll showcase this while I do my demo as well. So, just like how you would write a command in your normal Linux terminal, OCI CLI commands follow certain syntax, and that is the syntax that we follow. So just to recap, OCI is the keyword, IAM is the service name in this case. The user that you see on the screen is the resource type. List is the action that you can take, and then you provide various other options like compartment ID or subnet, VCN, things like that. Those becomes your parameter options. Now, similar to SDK code samples for every API, we also provide code samples reference for each API operation for CLI as well. As you see on the screen here, for example, command can be copied from your terminal, and you can change the values and make it work for your use case. Similarly, for every service, for every API operation, you can find an example CLI command and how to change that command to make it work for you. So those examples are given in our CLI documentation as well. So this is how we want to give SDK CLI information out to our users or developer community by giving code samples, by giving concrete example for every API that's out there today. All right, now let's talk about how do you get started using SDKs and CLI. Now, let's say you're interested in trying out CLI and SDK, and without having to install or configure it on your local environment or on cloud environment. So how can you do that? The answer to that is CloudShell. So what is CloudShell? CloudShell is a web browser-based terminal that is accessible from OCI console directly. So think of it as an online bash shell terminal that you can access it over internet. So the reason why it is easy to get started using CLI and SDKs on CloudShell is because it comes pre-installed with a latest version of SDKs and CLI. So that means you don't have to worry about preparing your tenancy, generating API keys and saving them, having a configuration file in your local machine so that you can talk to our cloud. So any of this setup, it can be avoided by directly going into OCI console and picking up CloudShell. Now, apart from SDKs and CLI, CloudShell is much more than that. It's a managed service, and it comes bundled with 30 plus additional popular tools that developers use today in their day-to-day life. So popular tools like Git, Helm, kubectl, Docker, Terraform. So all these new tools are available on CloudShell terminal, and they comes with latest version. So you can use the CloudShell terminal to try out various other aspects, not just SDKs and CLI, but in order to talk to Kubernetes, or if you want to provision a compute instance or some instance using Terraform, you can do that from CloudShell terminal. Lastly, we have created SDKs, quick start guides specifically for CloudShell. That means these quick start guides are designed for you to copy it and download on CloudShell terminal and start using it immediately for the purpose of learning. And as I said before, I'll share the link to this quick starts guide at the end of the slide so that you can go ahead and give a try. Now let's move to the next section, which is interactive CLI. We touched upon CLI, but we would like to show what actually the interactive CLI is in CLI. Okay, so interactive features in CLI were introduced few months back. So it's a recent launch of ours, and interactive features in CLI provides a new and easy way of interacting with OCI services from your terminal. So you can imagine interactive features to be a guided experience while you are using CLI. So in what way does interactive features help users? There are three key features that interactive CLI provides that stands out. And let's go through each of them. First one is command and parameter suggestion. So that means while you're using interactive CLI, we give you a menu that shows you various commands available, various parameters available, so that you can pick and choose which command and parameter you want for your command. The second key benefit is auto completion. That means as you see various commands and suggestions you want to enter, you don't have to type it completely. You can choose the commands from the menu. You can auto complete them. The third one is command reference information. This means every command has a specific information that is available, such as is this command or a parameter is a required parameter? Is this parameter an optional parameter? So those things are mentioned in the interactive features within the CLI. And while this is great, the explaining this on the slide may not be give you a clear picture. So what I would like to do is showcase these features through a live demo. And that's exactly my next slide as well. So let's jump into interactive CLI demo and see how interactive CLI helps you. So let me bring my terminal here. I'll stop share for a second. And I'm sharing my terminal here. So this is my Mac terminal. So let's say I want to run OCI CLI commands. So since I already know a few commands, I want to just show you what exactly CLI is and how the commands work. So let me type a simple command to get started. So I do OCI OS NS get, and I hit enter. So this gives me some response back. So this is the data I get back. Now let's go through this command. What exactly does it do, and what's the format of this command? So as you see here, every command, CLI command, starts with the keyword OCI. Next, it starts with OS. OS stands in this case for object storage. So that's the service that we want to talk to. The NS stands for namespace or the resource type in this case. And the get is finally the action that I want to take, whether it's, it could be get, or, it could be different other actions like, delete or, list, something like that. Now, this command gives me the namespace of my tenancy for object storage service in OCI. All right, so this is great, but you see a problem here. One is that as a new user, or for that matter, even if you're an expert user of CLI, you need to remember this command. Now, since this is a very simple command and I know it, I could easily type it out. But let's say we want to we want to interact with another OCI service, and it's a complex command, and you don't remember it, or let's say you don't even remember OCI OS NS get command. What would you do? So typically, you would go to OCI documentation, CLI documentation, look for object storage service. You find the object storage, then you look for, okay, I want to get namespace. So you go for a search for namespace, and then you see what is the action I can take for that specific command. And then you construct this whole CLI command. Now, this is where exactly interactive CLI comes into picture. So what I'll do right now is to show you the interactive features within CLI. So in order to get started with interactive CLI, the command that you would start off with OCI -I. Now, OCI, as I said, is always the pre-populated keyword that you need to give to run any CLI command. -I stands for I want to use interactive features in my CLI. So you type OCI -I. Now let's see what happens. So there you go. Now you're inside an interactive, let's say, a mode wherein you get it will give you a guided experience, and I'll show you how that does. But before that, a couple of things. As you see here, you don't need to type OCI. We always pre-populate that specific command beforehand, so that it's easy for you to type the rest of the command. We also give you a couple of shortcuts as to what exactly you can do on here, such as tab or enter to autocomplete or execute your command, Control D if you want to quit the interactive mode. So these are some of the details about the interactive CLI. Now, what I want to do here is that the same command that I ran before, by remembering it, which is OCI OS NS get, I want to run the same command within the interactive shell here. So what I do is I hit tab. Now, as you see, I get a drop-down menu here. Now, in this drop-down menu, I want to look for object storage because I want to interact with object storage. So what I do is I can go down this list and try to look for object storage. So as you see here, we give you a description of all the different services that are available and a keyword for that. So for example, let's say API gateway, and we give you the keyword and tell you what exactly that service is, which is API gateway. You see all the other services here. Now, as you go down and select a specific service, which is API gateway, for example, you don't actually have to type the full command, which is API gateway. It auto selects it for you, and you can just by hit enter and complete that specific keyword. So in our case, we are looking for object storage. So I go down the list and I'm looking for object storage. So I'll probably go somewhere in O section. So this is sorted in alphabetical order. So to make it easy. So as I go to the O section, I'm looking for, is there any object storage here? And I see there is an object storage service, and the keyword for that is OS. So I select that specific keyword. I don't need to again type it. I just select, hit enter. I again type space. Now it gives me the menu for next set of actions that I need to take. The next set of action that I need to take here is that I need to get the resource type. In this case, we are looking for NS, which is namespace. So I look for, is there any namespace here? And I see that there is a description that says a namespace is a logical entity that serves as a top level container. So I get that, okay, this is a namespace I want to use. And I type, I select NS, so I don't have to type. So I select NS. And the last option is I need to give the resource type or the options type. So in this case, I have three different options. I can give get, I can do get metadata, update metadata. I just want to do get. So I choose get, I hit enter, and now I'm ready to go because it's the same command that I executed on my normal terminal. So what I do right now is, since I completed the command, I'll hit enter and see what happens. So you see here, I got the same response back, which I got by typing my normal command from my terminal or from the CLI. So interactive CLI basically help you or guided you to construct this command without having to remember what is the keyword for object storage, what other commands that I can provide for object storage. So that's all simplified by just using interactive CLI features. You could have noticed one thing here, which is as I typed OCI OSNS get and hit enter, I came out of the interactive feature and I'm back in my normal terminal. This is by design. So we allow you to type one single interactive CLI command within the interactive feature. As you execute that command, you will be out of the interactive feature and you will back to normal terminal. So if you want to use the interactive feature again, there are two ways. Either you can start typing OCI -I and go back to interactive shell again. If not, what you could do is you can set your environment variables to true so that every time you type a command, you're automatically get into interactive mode so that you can use interactive features. So with that said, this was an easy command. Maybe you could be able to remember this command and type it in, not a big deal. Let's talk about, let's say, a much more complicated command or probably a harder command, which is not easy to remember and not straightforward. So let's try out one more command and see how it goes in interactive feature. So again, in order to get back into my interactive mode, I type OCI -I and hit enter. And I am back in my interactive feature. Now let's say I want to create a compute virtual machine in order to do something on top of that machine. So let's see how we can do this. The first step is, of course, I'll start with a tab and see what are the different options available for me to do. And now in this case, I'm looking for compute because I want to launch a compute instance. So I go looking down in, let's say, a C section to see if there is something called as compute here. And I see a bunch of other compute C that starts with various options like container engine, certificate service, etc. But I also see something called compute, which I want to launch. So create for me. So I choose this compute and I hit enter, and this auto completes the command. I don't have to type it in completely. So I choose compute, and again I hit space, and I see if there is what are the other options available for me in compute. Now in this case, I want to launch a compute instance. So again, I'm looking for, is there an instance here? I scroll through this drop-down list. I see something like instance, and there is a description of what exactly this is. This is what exactly I want. So I choose instance, I hit enter. Again, I hit space. Now I'm looking for what actions I can take on compute instance. So there are multiple options like, action, you can attach your VNIC, you can get all the instances, or you can list all the instances, etc. In this specific case, I want to launch a compute instance on OCI. So I choose launch. Again, I hit enter. It auto completes that command for me. Now, the last step that is remaining in this is to provide various parameters to this compute instance or the options. So what I do is I hit space. Now I see various options that I can provide for compute instance launch. Now, as you can see here, there are color coding here. So there is 4 parameters that are marked in red and rest of them are marked in black. So this is a way for users to understand what are required parameters and what are optional parameters. So the one in red and with an asterisk mark indicate that these are the required parameters and you must provide those parameters. The one in black are optional parameters and you can choose to ignore them. So what I want to do is start filling out all the required parameters in order for my command to work. So let's say I choose availability domain and I hit space. Now it gives me all the different availability domains that are available for my my tenancy in my specific region. So if you were to not get this list in this menu, typically the way you would do is you have to go to your OCI console or OCI documentation and try to figure out what is the keyword or the code for availability domain in Phoenix region. So that is not an easy task or not an easy thing for you to remember. But we have simplified that in interactive feature by populating the values by making a backend API call to your tenancy, fetching all the availability domains in that specific region and pre-populating them in this menu bar. So that way you can just go through this list and choose what specific domain, availability domain you want. So let's say in this case, I choose availability domain 2, AD2. I hit space because I have few more parameters I need to fill out. Now you see here, since I already filled out the availability domain, which was a required parameter, it's gone away from this list now. So I only have 3 more to fill, which are required. So let's go fill out each one by one. So I choose compartment ID, hit space. Now, typically what happens is that if you were to run this command on a normal CLI, you would have to give the OSID or the Oracle identifier for your compartment. So it's a large string that is very hard to remember. So what we have done here in this case is you have to only remember what compartment is your name. So let's say in my case, my compartment is my name, which is Karthik. So I go and find out in the menu, okay, great. There is a compartment with Karthik. So I choose my compartment and we automatically substitute the name of the compartment with the actual value in the backend here. So as you see here, you don't have to remember this compartment OSID. It automatically fills that out for you. So I have a couple of more things to fill out. So I'll choose shape here. I type space to see what are the different shapes I can provide. So whether it's bare metal, do I want to give standard VM machine, or do I want to give a GPU, etc. So let's say I choose a normal virtual machine, a standard machine of a certain shape. So I choose VM standard 2.1. Finally, I'm left with last one, which is subnet ID. So similar to compartment, I don't have to remember the exact code or the value or the OSID for my subnet. I know that the subnet that I want to use is demo subnet. So I choose that demo subnet and I hit enter from the drop-down menu. Now note that again, it substitutes the value of the subnet that you see here on the screen here, and it populates the value for you. So now we have basically completed this complex or a large command just as a guided experience, as if you are learning through it. So there is a drop-down options. You choose those values and the values get automatically populated, and now you are ready to go. So let's see what happens now. Now, all the required parameters that we saw in red asterisk mark, they are gone because you have fulfilled them. Now we are only left with these options, which are optional. So we don't need to give them. But for the sake of this example, I'll just choose one more. Let's say I want to choose an image. I choose image ID, and again I look for what specific operating system I want to use. So I'll choose, let's say, Oracle Linux. So I choose this specific image ID, and I hit enter. It again substitute the OSID for that Oracle Linux image, and this command is now complete. So next what I do is I hit enter and see what happens. Okay, so it gave me something back. So let's go through this response and see what is happening. So as you can scroll down a little bit up, you can see here is that this instance is getting provisioned. So let me bring up my OCI Cloud Console to show you what exactly is happening on my cloud. So let me share my screen again. I'm on my Oracle Cloud instance here. So this is the home page. So I go to instances, and I'm in my compartment card tick, and you can see here this instance is already up and running. So it was provisioned just probably within a minute back, and it's already available for you. So now the compute instance that you wanted to create is ready for you to use, and you can do various operations on top of that. So just by using the interactive CLI, you were able to create a compute instance, which is a complex command, and you were able to get a guided experience, and without having to remember various commands, various parameters or options. So that's the great thing about interactive features. So interactive features simplifies your overall CLI experience. It's a great tool for anybody, whether you're starting new or whether you're an expert CLI user. It makes your life easy on the job. So that's the demo about the interactive CLI. Let me go back to my presentation. All right. So I am back to my presentation, and finally, before we wrap it up, we have one last thing, which is what are some of the best practices for using SDKs and CLI? So I'll go through these pretty quickly, but I wanted to give a gist of how you can use SDK CLI in your day-to-day life in a better way. So if you want to, for the purpose of setting up, let's say if you don't want to use any of the configuration or any of the tenancy preparation, as I said before, CloudShell is the best place to start. It's readily available on the OCI console. You can open up a new terminal session, and you can start playing with SDK CLI. But for advanced users, let's say if you are to use for your production or a different environments, or if you want to use on a local machine or a VM, you can do that as well by setting up your tenancy, by installing all the configuration and CLI and SDK. You can do that setup as well. Now, for the purpose of authentication, there are various authentication mechanisms we provide. We provide user authentication via API keys. If you want to use the SCLI for a specific time period, you can do it through session auth, which gives you a token, and that is valid only for a certain period of time. Now, there is a couple of other options like instance principal and resource principal. So these are the ways wherein you provide an identity to OCI resource. So let's say you want to run an SDK CLI on a compute instance. You can give the compute the ability to run the CLI on behalf of you by nominating the compute instance as the identity by using instance principal. Similarly, a resource principal can be used to make an OCI resource an identity. So those are the different authentication mechanisms we provide depending upon what use case you have. Now, in terms of using the SDK CLI, we always recommend using the latest version because our latest version of SDK CLI gives you the latest features, security bugs that we release every week. So you can use the all the latest in your code as well. We recommend you use the API reference and our official doc while you are using SDK CLI. For the purpose of learning, again, CloudShell is the best place to start off. Then you can use our GitHub code samples. You can use our official documentation. For CLI, you can use the interactive CLI to learn and get a hang of CLI. So there are various ways you can learn the SDKs and CLI. Now, for troubleshooting, we have a detailed troubleshooting guide that explains various steps if something goes wrong, what actions you can take. So you can refer to our troubleshooting guide that is provided in the resource section. We also have a GitHub and a Stack Overflow wherein we constantly monitor. You can create a GitHub issue and we will look at them. Similarly, on Stack Overflow, you can post your questions and you can do a hashtag. We will monitor them and we'll answer them as soon as we can. So these are some of the guiding principles, or I would say best practices for using SDKs and CLI. So throughout my presentation, I talked about various resources such as, how do you get started, GitHub code samples, our API guidelines, and how to get started on CloudShell, etc. So all those different resources will be provided to you both in Slack as well as in the chat. So we highly encourage you to use these resources to get started, and let us know if you want some specific code example or improvement to our API documentation, etc. And we'll be happy to take that up. All right, so I know you might be interested in various other Oracle technologies and cloud tools and technologies. So we have various other events that keep happening throughout the year. So use this link that is on the screen to register, and you can basically attend any of these sessions. Again, thanks for your time, and I hope that you found the session useful. Thanks, everyone.